Good morning, Charles Cross. My name is Denise Sullivan, and we are speaking this morning about Bruce Springsteen and Ticketmaster and the State of Rock and Roll Pandemic 2022 edition for this month's edition of the Tour Worthy column. Hi, Charlie. How are you this
Hey,
morning?
Denise, good to see you. And do we already have scheduled the 2025 pandemic tour edition 3 years from now? Because sometimes it sort of feels like we're on that front. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I saw somebody, well, maybe it was Bruce. These dates that we're going to be talking about and the ticket prices for them, they are announced for 2023, correct?
Correct.
That to me seemed like a perfectly reasonable time to start a tour at one time. I mean, this is my thinking on it. Well, at least he held out until the future, which now, of course, is just around the corner, and it's not looking as good as some might have predicted. But yeah, let's talk about that. The state of live music has been so up and down for the last 2.5 years. I mean, the industry is in free fall. Artists are dying to get back on the road. Some of them have been back on the road. And Bruce wisely, for some of us, put it off until 2023. And then, boom, the big news, the tickets went on sale.
Yeah. Well, with touring in general, what's interesting is that other than Neil Young, bless you, Neil Young, he came out yesterday with a release, just once again restating that he believes touring is dangerous. And I talked to Neil for a piece I wrote with him in right at the end of last year. And I felt like I was talking to the only other person in the world who seems to be taking COVID seriously in music. And what Neil said is that there's a lot of great music he can put out from his archives. There are a lot of things he can do without touring. And he doesn't want to take the risk, not only himself, he doesn't want the risk to his audience. He realizes his audience is older and he wants there to be higher levels of vaccination, but that doesn't seem to be happening. So yeah, what has happened, I think, is that a lot of musicians realized how broke they were in many cases, and many started touring. And there were lots of tours announced, and lots of artists have gotten COVID. I could go through the list and name 100 artists, from Mick Jagger to the people in Kiss and Journey down on. Almost every artist that has gone on the road, some member of the band, Ringo Starr being another one, where two of the five major players. Now, thankfully, it wasn't Ringo. What nobody wants, anyone that loves music, whether you're going to shows or not, you do not want Bob Dylan to die of COVID the way John Prine did. And you certainly don't want that to happen while these guys are touring. Mick turned 79 today. He bounced back from his COVID very quickly, but Mick Jagger is in slightly better shape than Bob Dylan. So it remains a real unknown in the state of music.
Yeah, since you mentioned that, I had the chance to see Bob Dylan, and we do these calculations in our mind, right? That was actually the first big show that I went back to after all these years. And the thinking is kind of, well, I want to be current on what Dylan is doing. I want to feel part of this thing that we've done for virtually our whole lives since we were teenagers, attend live music shows. And so I finally, that was the threshold for me. Okay, I'm going to do this. And it's because we don't know if we're going to see Dylan again. It's just practical. He's 81 years old, and B, partly because of COVID, right? And I don't know how keen I am to return to large venue live music shows. We didn't mention Paul McCartney, who's also been working really hard on the road, and so worrisome for, as we've been told by experts, people over the age of 60, 65, and definitely as they age. So Bruce.
Bruce. Well, I think the point you bring up brings us to Bruce. And part of it is that you and I and many other people who love music, these artists have been talisman in our lives. They've been the North Star. Like, I can't think of anything in my life more than Joni Mitchell being the North Star of my life. And thankfully, she's had a huge comeback and played on the weekend, which was the thing that just literally brought tears to my eyes. Now, would I have risked COVID if I knew Joni Mitchell was playing? I would have. I would have probably died happy to got COVID, but maybe not. You know, there are other things in life other than music. But we have these relationships with these artists that we have loved. Bob Dylan, I've been following since I was, 14 years old. Springsteen, the year later. Joni Mitchell, the same year. Same with Neil. All those people came into my life at this pivotal moment. And I just can't imagine checking out in any way. I don't always buy every one of Bob's records right away, or Bruce's necessarily even. I guess I buy all Bruce's records, but I can't say I'm enamored with the many of them the last 20 years. But I'm on the bus. And the question is, through COVID or through ticket prices, where is the point when you love these artists for decades? Where's the point you get off the bus? And maybe that's a difficult decision for aging rock critics. And I think it's a difficult decision for rock fans. And you add the ticket thing in, and it's a brouhaha. I would go so far as to say this Springsteen ticket disaster is the biggest disaster in music since the Fire Festival. It makes that look well organized and thought out. At least with that, everybody knew they were paying a crap load to go to this thing. No one knew in advance of those tickets going on sale for Springsteen that it was going to turn into this kind of shit show, if I can say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, last time that I checked the news on it, the Springsteen camp had not made a statement, which fans of well, I'd say a lot of fans are kind of waiting to hear what the explanation is. You and I know, and people who follow the story about Ticketmaster and this idea of dynamic pricing understand the logistics of that. But what would we as fans and consumers expect to hear from the artist on the marquee regarding the ticket prices, and how much control do they or don't they have around that? And would it be appropriate at this point to have a statement from the artist?
Yeah, and Ticketmaster made a statement, but let's jump back in case somebody isn't following what happened. What happened was Springsteen announced he was doing a massive world tour in 2023, the first time he toured in quite a while, likely the last E Street Band tour of all time. And they put shows in Europe on sale, and he's playing stadiums there where Bruce is more popular in Europe than he is in America even. And the sale of those went relatively okay. Tickets were sometimes $200, but many tickets were $80. And the shows sold, and things operated fairly okay. What didn't happen was that the US was being run by Ticketmaster and Live Nation. And, I could also have this history. Maybe all the European shows have not been gone on sale. Am I wrong on that?
I
think
can't.
the European tickets have gone on sale, but we'll have to go back and make sure I'm correct. The truth is, I didn't buy them because I'm not wanting to travel to Europe. But suddenly Europe is looking like, I'd love to be I think you'd be safer in an outdoor stadium in Milan with 110,000 Springsteen fans in a 95% vaccinated country than you will be in Tampa, Florida, where the show kicks off in February, in an indoor arena. But what happened is Bruce put the US tour on last week, and everybody was waiting. They did one thing where you had to register in advance. And if you forgot to register in advance, you couldn't buy tickets, at least in the early part. So the tickets go on sale, and almost immediately, within minutes, suddenly the only tickets available were tickets that were literally as much as $4,000 to $5,000 to $6,000. What Ticketmaster used is something they've used on some other shows, which is called dynamic pricing. And it's like airline pricing or hotels, where if there's a huge demand, they jack the price up for the remaining tickets. In this instance, Ticketmaster claims they're doing this to defeat the scalpers, that if they sold every ticket for $250, the scalpers would resell them for $2,000. But everyone's aware of scalping. We've dealt with that since the dawn of Elvis Presley. We have not been aware of trying to buy a legitimate ticket, 2 tickets in the back of the floor in Tampa for $4,400 each. And that's what I looked at when I logged in. And that is a wake-up call beyond belief. And so that happened last week. And there was some thought that maybe there just was a computer era here, and they would correct this. Well, what's happened is there have been 2 other on sales since that initial one. Bruce has not made a statement. There's been no adjustment. The further sales have still had the dynamic pricing. Finally, yesterday or the day before, Ticketmaster came out with kind of a defense, a press release, and they claim that it was 95% of the tickets or 92% of the tickets sold for $200 or less. And they said the average ticket of the tickets sold was $262. So they're saying that dynamic pricing is only 11 to 15% of the tickets there. Well, am I the first person to say $262 is a lot? You know, but if Bruce came out and every ticket was $200, at least there'd be some equity and some fairness. What doesn't make sense is that for an average fan to get into that show, to pay $10,000 to bring a partner to a show, Bruce Springsteen is not worth that. He is not. I love Bruce Springsteen. I've seen him hundreds of times. But that is an economic problem for a lot of people that really is in absolute contrast to Bruce's image. And let's also throw into this equation, Bruce sold his publishing last year for what is reported to be $500 million. 500 million is what he made on his publishing. So Bruce does not need this ticket income. So that's where we're at now. There's been no statement from Bruce. Ticketmaster's response has been mocked by people. There are incredible number of memes. And I don't know, as a PR disaster, if Bruce can recover from this, because this image of that you have to give a kidney or pay your mortgage for several months to see Bruce Springsteen is going to stick with him for the rest of his career.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, a couple things. Well, this idea that the artist has a hand in the deal that is made with the ticket vendor, specifically Ticketmaster, about the pricing, about the different levels and tiers, and the, you know, this stuff that started years ago. So we also, as you know, and I will use the word consumer, even though, you know, we don't like to think of that in terms of music and the product and whatnot, but we shouldn't be surprised. This this level of pricing with the VIP pricing, I think they started with the backstage meet and greet, throw it all in, priority seating and whatnot. This has been coming. And if we really think about it, it's been coming for several decades. Go back to Pearl Jam and the fight that they fought on their own, I would add. I don't remember a lot of people stepping up and joining in that fight.
Yeah, Neil came in, but that was about it. There was
and
artist.
Of all things too, Neil Young, voice of reason in this particular situation with COVID and touring, that's another one that we could ponder and think about for days. But at any rate, the pricing and just the way that, you know, capitalism works and corporate structure and everything that is unfolding before us now, it shouldn't come as a surprise. That said, an artist of Springsteen's caliber is often thought of one who would weigh in on these matters. Therefore, this expectation that we might hear from the artist seems realistic in a fan's eyes, but from a business perspective, and to your point, from a PR perspective, this is like, this is a very fiery issue. This can go a couple different ways, and none of them seem very good.
Yeah, I think that's very correct. Remember that we've got Bruce Springsteen, and we've got a unique artist with Bruce Springsteen who has been political, talks to his artist, talks to his audience during the show. People feel they have a personal relationship with Springsteen, partially because of the way he is on stage, partially because of the power of his lyrics. And he's also been very outspoken politically, talking about issues, performing for politicians, speaking out on causes. That goes back to No Nukes, which is, the first premiere of the song The River, where Bruce goes to this place's concert. At that concert, he didn't speak out politically, but over the course of the next 4 decades, Bruce began talking very, very political. There's almost no other artist that is associated with the Democratic Party as Bruce. He and Obama did a podcast together, a film, a book. These are people who say, both Obama and Bruce, nobody wins unless everybody wins. This is on a t-shirt that Bruce Springsteen fans wear. The idea of nobody wins unless everybody wins, and you having to buy tickets for $10,000 for a pair of tickets halfway back the audience in Tampa, doesn't add into that equation. And Bruce absolutely knew that ticket prices were going to be this high. His management knew, and he knew. There is no way every single little aspect of the Bruce tour is dealt with. When I ran the Springsteen fanzine Backstreets, had an issue with Bruce's management, because a Backstreets t-shirt we were wearing, they thought we were selling for our little fanzine that never made any money. But his management was upset because they thought the Pantone cover, the color, was the same color they were using. So if you think this is an artist that the management is not aware of what ticket prices were and what the top, they didn't think this was going to happen, of course, but they're very, very aware of everything. And Bruce is an extremely smart guy. He knows a lot about business. He is not somebody that somebody else runs the show. They certainly didn't think this was going to happen. What he should have done, in my mind, is immediately cancel the ticket sales. That has happened before. Mm-hmm. These shows are over. We're going to resell all these tickets. We're talking about shows that are 5-6 months away. We're going to resell these shows, we're going to refund everybody, and every ticket's going to be $225. And $25 goes to the local food bank, or whatever they do in that way. And then if you get in, you get them. And if they get resold to scalpers, so what? There isn't a way really to stop that. There are some ways that Bruce has even tried in the past, but the dynamic is, it makes no sense. There are other ways that tickets can be done. The Grateful Dead from your city, they used to operate with a system that you would send a mail order ticket in and you'd go through a drawing and a lottery. And Springsteen's done that at some shows. There's a lottery for the pit and other things. It could be accomplished. Would it be hard to accomplish at 18,000 seater? Yes. But can it be done? Yes, it can be done. There's some artists that play and don't take any of the money. All the money is a donation to a cause. Bruce has played other shows for that too. I'd be much more comfortable paying $1,000 if I knew it was going to the Democratic Party or for voting rights, for God's sakes. I'd pay $1,000 to see Bruce if I knew it went to an issue for voting rights or an anti-abortion clinic. I'd be up for that. But I'm not willing to give $8,800 to see Springsteen halfway back in Tampa, Florida. And many people aren't. So the magazine I used to edit and still work for, Backstreets, the Springsteen magazine, wrote an editorial. And I'll just read one line here that kind of goes to this. At a time when we needed to feel hope and promise, when the world seems on fire, when we suffered through escalating deception, greed, fear, isolation, racial strife, violence, alternative facts, democracy literally under threat in an ongoing global pandemic, we're left feeling disillusioned, downhearted, and dispirited. When the ideals Bruce's music puts forward if only for a few hours every so often. The concept is Springsteen puts these ideals forward. He tries to walk the talk, but there is nothing about tickets being this expensive in this system that makes sense. This is just simply wrong. And the fact that they haven't come out and said it's wrong, that makes it even wronger. That's the real crime.
Yeah.
The mistake of trying to tour and having Ticketmaster do this tour, the world is full of compromises, but Bruce Springsteen has absolute power to cancel these shows, re-put the tickets on sale, and do this in an equitable way where even if scalpers make money and juice the system for some of the tickets, the bulk of the tickets go to fans in a way that can be afforded. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And that, of course, I was going to ask you for a practical solution to a real problem. And that is brilliant. What a great idea. Yeah. Call it off now. But as you were talking, I think you got to the heart of what I feel as, not just a critic, but a fan. And there are some artists that, that line gets really blurry. You yourself, started a zine that was devoted to reporting on Bruce and critiquing him in some way, but it was largely because we love him so darn much. And at one point, he could do no wrong. And as time has gone by, well, we all grow up and realize that people are human, we make mistakes, but here's the thing, we can correct them. And this idea that it was a missed opportunity to shed light on this nation's dire state, that's the crime, really, in some of our minds. In my heart, I think that's what you got to, is that this was supposed to be a stand-up guy. He was the stand-up guy for our lifetime in rock and roll. And so it comes as a big disappointment. And that's, I think, when you're talking about, can he recover from it? Well, not with a certain type of listener.
Right.
Maybe.
Well, I have to say, I feel betrayed. And you're right. I started Backstreets in 1980. I was a college student, and I felt Bruce wasn't getting enough attention for how great his live shows were. And so I started this little zine that was sort of preaching that this guy live is incredible. That was essentially my message. Bruce himself, already by that era, was using the line that he had doctored from other people, which was trust the art, not the artist. So in a way, he was trying to have it both ways, because the art was about income inequity. It was about the recession. It was about the working man and woman. These were themes in the music that I fell in love with. And I believed in those themes all my life. They shaped, in many ways, Bruce Springsteen, Neil Young, and Joni Mitchell shaped the way I think about everything, because they made me realize with Joni, that love was a very powerful force. With Neil, that impassioned anger is a powerful force. And with Bruce, that there could be justice. And you could write and sing about that. This thing with the tickets is not justice. And it is a break in that relationship that Bruce has talked about, that he's had with his audience, how he tells a story on every tour of these same characters in a way. And he just takes them further down the road. They start off in Born to Run as young adolescents, breaking through, they get married in the river, on and on. They're back to trying to celebrate their glory days by the time of Born in the USA. And by The Rising, they're dealing with an international crisis and trying to rise up from that. These are the same characters that end up in every song in a way. And I don't know where those characters are when they need to buy tickets for $5,500. These are the biggest problems in America. Income inequity affects every single aspect of our lives. And this is an artist that I thought would never do this. Do I expect tickets to be bought and scalped? Yes. Are there ways to fight that? Yes, there are. Bruce Springsteen himself can't fight that fight. That has to be an industry fight. But and one reason, Backstreets continued on was because we had a free ticket exchange. You were allowed to exchange tickets. You have tickets in Tampa, you want to go to Chicago, you trade your 2 extra tickets, and we made a rule you can never sell them for more than the list price. And so, yeah. And
there are people like you said that are out there trying to participate in making tickets available. The organization Bruce Funds, I've followed them a little bit online, but what I understand is that they make tickets available to those who can't come up with the money for the ticket, which is understandable. I mean, look, 10, 15 years ago, I balked at a $300 ticket to see Leonard Cohen. Do I regret it? Yes, because it would have been my last opportunity to see Leonard Cohen. But at the same time, no, because I can't practically pay for for a $300 ticket every time I want to see an artist. So this has been going on for a while, but there are folks who will assist, but we're just like out of the realm of possibility and reality now with a $5,000 ticket. So
there are solutions, and there are solutions to this. What's shocking is that Bruce Springsteen has not come forward and said anything. And by having Ticketmaster put the press release out, it's like Ticketmaster's getting the grief, but this is something the artist very much could control. And I'm not sure if Bruce can pull much of his fan base back in. My prediction, if this continues, is that the tickets will be so much cheaper. No one can pay that much. The prices have to go down. But it just feels spoiled right now. If somebody gave me a ticket, I don't know how I would feel sitting there next to somebody that might have paid $4 grand. And even if it gets canceled and the remaining tickets don't get sold, we know that 11% of the tickets sold with those dynamic pricing. So you're going to look around the stadium and go that 11% of the people in here paid thousands and thousands of dollars. And the average price is $262. That's still too much. In my mind, for a guy that's going to make more money than the ticket price in merchandise sales. The standard that, if people don't know the industry, is that almost every act of a legacy sort makes as much as the ticket price on merch sales at a concert. And so there's a lot of money for Bruce to be made, even if the tickets were free. But this is just ridiculous. And in a way, here's a guy that talked about what was right and wrong, and every single aspect of this is wrong. So at present, I don't have a ticket. Seattle tickets go on sale tomorrow. I don't even know if I can try to get a ticket, because if I get on there and I see it pop up with a $4,000 ticket, it's going to break my heart even more. And I don't feel like I can go with this. I think it's more important. It's like being a union buster, which Bruce has also talked about. I don't want to cross the picket line of what this means to the world. But yeah.
I mean, it also taps into the disappointment that I feel just kind of in general in rock and roll and the business around it. And that's a conversation that we can likely have at another time. But this idea that the boss is being, run by Ticketmaster, it doesn't compute. My mind is exploded behind that. I just want to ask you, since we didn't really introduce you properly at the top, you are a longtime Seattle journalist and author of books about Nirvana, Jimi Hendrix, people from the region. What has Bruce meant in the region? As you say, as you go to look at those tickets tomorrow, what do you expect your fellow Seattleites and people from the Northwest will be thinking and talking about in light of what's happening now?
Well, Bruce is, a New Jersey guy, but he's very well loved on the West Coast. Be that Seattle, be it Portland. Seattle, he played some unbelievably legendary shows here, and people still talk about the Aroma of Tacoma show, where Bruce was talking about that. It was a working class town. Seattle was one of the first places he brought in a food bank. and got them involved as donations of a show. People would bring donations to a show. San Francisco with Winterland, and I saw some incredible shows in Oakland and in the Bridge concert. I saw 5 of those. That this has been one of Bruce's hotbeds, and in LA, where he lived part-time, he was bigger than almost anywhere else in America. I don't know what the West Coast will feel on this. In New Jersey, there will be people that will go. I don't know, though. It's all up in the air what this means for Bruce and what this means for a Bruce show. And it used to be also part of the tribe, very similar to the Grateful Dead. You went to see people, you went to be with your friends. And this is, as Backstreet said in its editorial, this is a foundation breaking, worldview shaking notion. And I don't know what it means for Springsteen fans or for that community.
Well, this is a story that's still evolving and unfolding, and we can direct people, I guess, to backstreets.com.
Yep, they're writing about it, and of course, I mean, it's been everywhere in the press, from Variety to Twitter, and not much of it that I have not read a single response where someone has defended what Bruce has said and said this made sense. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. So we will continue to check in and follow the story as it unfolds. Thank you so much, Charles Cross, for speaking with us this morning. And yeah, good luck securing those tickets. I know that I feel like having been a journalist, I received my fair share and more of free tickets through the years, and I'm often happy to pay at the door these days. But this is a bridge too far.
It is.
Yeah. So
and even that has shifted in the industry, where many journalists, even covering it for a newspaper, are now asked to have the paper pay. There are some artists, the Stones being a great example, they don't give a free ticket to anybody. But yeah, it's a mess. So I don't know if I'll be there, or I went to one Bruce show and I didn't get in, and I listened to it through a crack in the back door. Maybe that's what I do this time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And all things considered, with the virus and variants thereof, we'll either see you at a show in 2023 or 24 or 25. So
nobody wins unless everybody wins. So it's a good way to live your life. And apparently Bruce doesn't remember ever saying that. So
yeah, breaks our heart.
Great talking to you, Denise.
You too. Take care. Thank you.